We'll just be one more minute, everyone. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you very much for your patience, everyone. We will return to the council meeting agenda. All right, just reiterating, we were at 8.3, Beale Ward by-election update. Just confirming, the motion was moved by Deputy Mayor Councillor Rick Garotti. It was seconded by Councillor Alicia Curry. Confirming that is correct. And it was voted in favour unanimously, so it was carried unanimously. Moving on to 8.4, record of councillor meetings. There is one speaker on this item. So Kat Wright, on behalf of residents of Ellesmere Parade, will address the council in person and is speaking for the recommendation. Welcome, Kat. Thanks for coming. It's nice to see you. Have 2 minutes.
I'm not sure if it's for or against, but it's speaking. So thank you. So residents of Ellesmere Parade were devastated about the removal of our trees as part of the crossing project. There's community support for improving transport infrastructure and active transport, but residents are questioning whether the loss of the trees was unavoidable or a result of earlier planning decisions. Given Council's commitment to increasing tree canopy, mitigating urban heat island effects and protecting significant trees, our community needs to understand whether the decision was made for the bike path with alternative designs that were considered or that could have achieved green transport objectives while retaining our trees. 11th of April 22, Council adopted its transport advocacy project list. It identified the cycling corridor route from Rosanna Station to McLeod as a high priority project, and stakeholders were Department of Transport and VicTrack. So Council was advocating for the corridor well before the level crossing was exhibited. 9th of October 23, the project list was updated and the path was also still a priority project.
Sorry, Mayor, just a point of order and just for the Speaker's benefit, the item that we're speaking to is a record of councillor meetings.
Yes, that's right.
So I just want to make sure that our commentary is in line respective to that item, which was a record of whether councillors attended a meeting.
Yep.
And it doesn't debate a whole range of topics.
No,
so
we've just got some questions about that meeting.
So, yes, so could we limit the scope into the briefing?
Sure.
Thank you.
So the questions were, and it relates to the briefing, was 22 the first time the path was considered, or was it at that meeting? If not, at what date did council first resolve, endorse or otherwise support the path? What consideration was given to preserving the existing trees at that time? At what point were residents consulted about the project, possible design options, including impacts on the existing trees? Was an alternative design investigated that would have allowed the bike path to proceed while retaining all or most of the existing trees? If those alternatives were considered, what was the reasons for that, or if they were rejected? And did you formally determine that the benefits of the bike path outweighed the loss of the trees? And if so, where is that decision recorded? Who at council supported the decision and why were the residents not notified?
Thanks very much for speaking, Kat. Much appreciated. So, councillors, before we move the motion on the record of councillor meetings, does any councillor have a question of officers at all? Councillor Alicia.
Thank you. For clarification, I think the Speaker was referring to the level crossing removal that's coming up at Ruthven Street and Council's role. So could I have clarification from the respective director if what's Council's decision-making capacity in relation to the level crossing removal?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. The level crossing removal is a declared state major transport project. So the decision-making authority sits with the state government through the Minister for Planning.
Thank you. Councillors, do we have any other questions of officers at this point?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Peter.
Just a quick question through you, the relevant officer. There's a few questions that were asked. It's not really specific to this item. Is there another point at this evening that some of those questions might be considered or discussed from officers providing information?
Through you, Mayor, we're not tabling any reports in relation to the Ruthven level crossing this evening, but any person's able to submit a public question to a council meeting in accordance with our governance rules.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. So I'm now calling for a motion. Do I have a mover? Councillor Alicia Curry. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Rick Garotti, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Alicia, would you like to speak to the item? Yes.
Yes. Thanks, Mayor. So thanks to the Speaker. I know there's a lot of community concern. Council are concerned as well. The briefings that Council have that we provide a record of are confidential in nature, but I can generally tell you, and you would know from conversations that I have with the public and have made public through this chamber, that every time this topic comes to Council, we are an advocate on behalf of the community, an advocate on behalf of the trees. We do explore opportunity to forward those messages. The extent of the questions and the assumptions made do not cover anything in front of Council at this moment. We have no decision making. And the reasons for the tree removal have been made clear, that they are attributed to a number of factors, including the construction method, the cabling, the underground services. There's also new regulations that have been implemented since we did the last crossing removal. So every time it comes to us, we do that advocacy, but the scope of what's coming through and in this meeting was not a briefing where Council had decision-making capacity. And so in that respect, the information that's come through this Council in formal channels with the opportunity for speakers has come and gone, and this is not something that we can do further decision-making on. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rick is the seconder. Would you like to speak to the item?
Just flag to our speaker that if with those questions, please feel free to email them through to the Mayor if you wish, and to I, and we'd be happy to facilitate a response to you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Okay, would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Peter.
Just my question was getting to the point that later tonight there'll be some answers to some of the questions that were posed to council, so we'll hear some information on that. And just a reminder that this is a rail crossing project for vehicles. The reason that this is happening is to increase the ability for cars to move. So it's a consequence of improving traffic, not for a bike path.
Thanks very much, councillor. Any other councillor have a question at all? Yeah, councillor Alicia.
I'd like to thank the Speaker. I think the Speaker actually reflects the reason why many residents in Banyule are residents of Banyule. We hear it time and time again through community surveys that our environment is one of the main reasons people choose to live in this area. So when we have residents who are advocating for retention of trees, and sure, there's pushback, there's regulation, there's other tiers of government that have jurisdiction. I would not let that cloud or in any way prevent me from advocating for what I believe. And I really admire that you've come here tonight, Kat, supporting what is obviously passionate for you, but not just for you, for residents of Banyule, residents of the McLeod-Rosanna area, because many of them choose to live there for that reason, for the beautiful trees in the area. So writing to the state member, we have an election coming up, lest we not forget that this is a good year to make your position known. And I see you do have what looks like a placard there. We certainly do need other levels, other state members to understand that this is important, our trees are important, and solutions should arise that provide both and rather than either or. It is possible, it's a matter of good design, and it's a matter of consulting our community appropriately. Well done.
Okay. Thanks very much, councillor. Any other councillor wish to speak? Okay, councillor Alicia, as the mover, would you like a right of reply? No? Okay, I'm going to put that in motion. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 11.1, the Boulevard, Eaglemont and Ivanhoe East proposal to place permanent barriers. So Director Natasha Swan has left the room due to her conflict of interest. We have no speakers on this item. Councillors, before we move the motion, does any councillor have a question of officers? Okay, Councillor Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And through you to the appropriate officer. So the decision tonight is whether or not to construct a closure, permanent closure on the road. With that, there is a conceptual design that is set to manage the area, is probably the best way to put it, with landscaping, calming measures and so forth. They include some widening, some narrowing, if I'm not mistaken, and even speed limits, proposed speed limits. So if officers could just comment on whether or not those comments are correct, and also what might be the limitations or consequences if the closure didn't go ahead in terms of achieving the outcomes that those conceptual designs are set to do.
Director Darren.
Thanks for the question, and through you, Mayor. So you're right, the purpose of the report tonight is to consider the installation of permanent barriers on the boulevard. So the proposed closure is in response to community consultation that's occurred to date, including the consideration of submissions that was heard at the last council meeting. The key feedback that we've heard includes concern around increased through traffic, access to property and maintaining the rural character of the road. So if council resolves to support permanent barriers, this will allow the design to respond to the expected vehicle usage that is on that road. Banyule's standard road design in relation to surface width is really determined by how many vehicles use that road. At the moment, if the road is over 150 vehicles per day, for example, we need a wider road. Permanent barrier is likely to result in less than that, which will allow us to reduce the road in some areas. So put in simple terms, if the decision is made tonight, a permanent barrier will allow that to minimise the width of the road in some areas and maintain a lower speed and retain the rural character, and will most likely or will facilitate safer outcomes for shared users. If the decision not to put that permanent barrier in, potentially the road may increase in usage, which would increase over that vehicle count per day, which could result in a wider surface of the road. Does that answer the question?
If you don't mind me, I might just drill into that a little bit. Specifically the number at 150 cars per day, which I don't believe was in the current report. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. Can you comment on what the current number of cars travelling on the boulevard is? So what I'm trying to get to is if there wasn't a closure, we've got the current number now and what we might perceive to be a number going forward. I'm just trying to work through that number there. And then on the back of that, you talked about potentially widening of the road. And are there limitations to doing that, and what might they be?
Thanks for the follow-up question and through you, Mayor. So the traffic volume was included in reports that was available on Shaping Manual, so that was there. There were traffic counts in 2022 in various sections along the boulevard. At that time, the vehicles per day was under the 150. There was a further traffic volume count done in 2024, and at certain areas along the road that exceeded the 150 threshold for vehicles per day. So that's in relation to the traffic counts. So I guess it's increasing above that threshold. Our standard road drawings for a rural access road indicates that if the counts go up and maintain over 150 vehicles per day, the minimum seal would be 6.2 metres.
If you don't mind, Mayor.
One more question.
So to achieve a 6.2 metres, and just confirming that the current count is there or thereabouts on the threshold. So to achieve 6.2 metres across the entire boulevard, can you speak a little bit to what that might entail?
Thanks for the follow-up question. I guess in terms, and I don't know the boulevard intimately across each of the sections, but I would imagine some of the actual road would need to be widened in some areas and to accommodate that width. And yeah, that I would imagine that potentially it could require some tree removal in some areas to get that width. So that would probably be, off the top of my head, the impact of that increased width.
Does any other councillor have a question at all for officers? Councillor Rick.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just through you to the appropriate officer, just wanting to recap the cost incurred by council to do the resurfacing of the road and then the additional cost to do this road closure works and process through you, Mayor.
Director Darren.
Thanks for the question and through you, Mayor. At the moment, the budget for the works is $2 million. I guess in terms of the resurfacing or the resealing, we would need to spend almost that amount anyway to maintain the road to a standard that's required under the various acts and obligations. So we'd be required to do that anyway. The closure is one permanent barrier, which is really minimal. I don't have the cost off the top of my head, but I would imagine it would be minimal for that barrier and some landscaping works. It's important to note at the moment that that estimate is only based on a concept. Should the decision be taken today, we'll then move into detailed design, and that will clarify the likely probable costs.
Thanks, Director. Any other question from any other councillor? Okay, so we've got a report before us. I'm calling for a motion. Do I have a mover? Councillor Peter Castaldo is moving. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Alida McKern. Councillor Peter, would you like to speak to the item as the mover?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Look, thank you for coming in, those that are interested in this item. The Birrarung, also referred to as the Yarra River, is a culturally important area for our First Nations and the current inhabitants. Today, I hope we are ensuring that it stays that way. When this item first came to us to resheet the road, community were highly concerned, to put it politely. Since then, we've undertaken a very carefully considered consultation to ensure we sensitively address the important area. And this is the first step, dare I say, to improving the area, to improve accessibility, not all accessibility, but better sensitive accessibility for walkers, joggers, bike riders, and the local vehicles. I'm supportive of the barrier as a first step to this project, and I encourage my fellow councillors to support the motion before us this evening.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Alida is the seconder. Would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the extensive work undertaken by officers and residents who have engaged with Council over many years on the future of this section of the boulevard. Personally, I don't think this has ever simply been a debate about the condition of a road. Given what I've heard from the community and what I've heard from my fellow colleagues and officers, it has been about preserving the unique character of a very special part of Banyule. I support the officer recommendation, as does my colleague Peter Castaldo, to install permanent barriers. It responds to long-standing concerns about rat running, improves safety, and allows this section of the boulevard to function primarily as a local access road rather than a through route. Very important. However, I believe this report also presents Council with a much bigger opportunity. By removing through traffic, we are fundamentally changing the function of this road. Rather than viewing this as simply a traffic management project, I believe that we should begin thinking about the long-term vision for this remarkable place. And I know that quite a number of the community in the area feel the same. The boulevard, with its winding alignment, mature vegetation, proximity to the Yarra River parklands, and distinctive semi-rural character, is one of Banyule's most unique landscapes. Places like this are increasingly rare in metropolitan Melbourne. So I would encourage Council to consider preparing a landscape vision or master plan for this precinct to enhance the biodiversity, strengthen walking and cycling experiences, improve Indigenous planting, and most importantly, protect the landscape character that residents clearly value.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Does any other councillor like to speak on the item? Would like to speak, Councillor Rick.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'll be voting in favour of the road closure. I just find it remarkable, you know, when I reflect on it, and I've been part of the decision-making process, but for us as a council to spend $2 million on this process for an outcome that residents were happy with originally, I've really got to go away and just reflect on that myself, because I look at other unsealed roads across the city of Banyule and people crying out for funding. I look at roads that are potholed, cracked, and I refer them to the city assets team and they tell me 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. I'm frustrated, to be honest. So I think this is the right outcome now, but to put $2 million toward this as a council, in view of all of our other priorities, I'll be calling it out. Potholed road, cracked road, unsealed road. What are we doing about it? How does it comply with the Road Safety Act? We can put $2 million here. We should be able to make sure the rest of our roads across Banyule are up to standard. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor. Deputy Mayor. Any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Peter as the Councillor Matt. Sorry, go for it. Councillor Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I will make a few comments. So I'm frustrated is a good word. I am frustrated that this is where it is, but I am supportive of this road being appropriately and fully resurfaced. So make no mistake about that. And I'm very motivated to see this as a vastly improved cycling route. And we've had confirmation that the overall project and concept plan that was briefly described earlier includes the sealing of Grua Crescent and a connection from the Court Bowl to the main Yarra Trail with a sealed shared user path. So that's encouraging. That improvement is in the bicycle strategy. I'm also in favour of retaining the unique and extraordinary country landscape that does exist. It is really something special. With adequate traffic management. And if that includes a closure, so be it, based on need. So what I'm grappling with tonight, and I'm still grappling with, is the committing to closing it now. A road closure, in my view, should be a last resort. You know, our city is choking with traffic issues. And to close this without quantitative data based on essentially a hypothetical or an assumption of what's going to happen, I've got a real issue with. The calming measures that have been briefly described and are in the report, including 30k speed limit, you know, they should be enough to control the traffic without the need of a closure. But just this last bit of information that we've heard tonight that has come to my attention, which wasn't adequately disclosed in the report, in my view, with the idea that we're on the precipice of going from that 140, 150 cars to, if I heard the officer correctly, we need to widen the road to have an adequate space. You know, I do know the boulevard really well. I try and run and ride on it all the time, and widening it would be a real problem. So somebody said earlier, you know, progress, not perfection, or something to that extent. So that's where I'm at, frustrated.
Okay. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Alicia.
Thank you. Just briefly, I think I agree with the sentiments that has been shared, and just to acknowledge that when this project came out, the intention is to keep this area unique and a quiet area and reduce speeds. I too have queried myself and officers and councillors as to the timing of when the barriers have been suggested and whether we wait to respond to a need. But after further information, a few more queries from directors today, plus the amount of emails that I've received from residents. So I'm really supportive that we came to a position where the residents were supportive of the outcome for the majority. And so we will be supporting the motion based on that. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Oh, it's up to me. All I would be saying is I actually am in line with Deputy Mayor Councillor Rick. I am very aware that we have residents on roads in the east and north of, or northeast and east of Banyule who are screaming for surfacing, let alone resurfacing. Unfortunately, that's not part of the recommendation that we're voting on. So we can't do that tonight. So, Councillor Peter, as the mover, would you like a right of reply?
Yeah, I thank my fellow councillors. All your comments I agree with. It's a complicated matter down here, but this isn't a complicated area of high significance. The Birrarung strategy is down there to lay out a future for along the Yarra River. That's important. But we're in partnership with Parks Vic, we're in partnership with council, with the Wurundjeri, with the residents. We need to move carefully and well considered down there, and I think this step is an essential part. We don't want to create a problem and then have to fix it. We know that if you improve road accessibility, you get more cars. We need to stop the cars deciding to all go down there, and this is the first step to making sure we pay the due care and consideration to the type of environment we want to have down there, and that's one of respecting and caring for nature, and that interplay between us as humans and the nature along the river. And I think I'm very supportive, and I think we're going to have something that is worth having down there. This $2 million isn't just to surface a road, it's to improve accessibility for people like Councillor Matt mentioned, those that wish to ride a bicycle down there or to run or to walk. This is an important community asset as well for a lot of people, and I've had a number of people communicate to me that they're looking forward to being able to go down there and enjoy that pathway as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay. I now put that in motion. All those in favour? 2, 3, 4, 5. That is carried unanimously. Could I please ask for Director Natasha Swan to be invited back into the room? Item 11.2, 89 to 97 Bond Street, Ivanhoe. Amendment to permit for the development and use of land for community care accommodation and associated vegetation removal. We have 2 speakers on this item. Fiona Downing from Ivanhoe, speaking against the item. Sorry, okay, we'll just wait for people to leave the room before Fiona comes and speaks. Cool. Hello, Fiona. Thank you for joining us this evening. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. I'm here tonight because I hope to persuade you to retain both mature red ironbarks on Bond Street. If not, at least retain one of them. I've lived on opposite the site for nearly 20 years. These red ironbarks are far more than just landscape features. They provide habitat, shade and character, and they are part of what makes Banyule special. I wake up to birdsong every morning and visitors come to my home and say it sounds like an aviary. Once mature red ironbarks like these are removed, they cannot be replaced in our lifetime. I'm aware you may have concerns about the safety, given council cannot compel the applicant to maintain the trees. You don't need to. The applicant already has an ongoing legal obligation because they're a community care residential provider. The question before you is not about whether these trees should be maintained, they should. The question is whether permanent removal has been shown to be the only reasonable option. You now have 3 arborist reports with different recommendations. I appreciate the council's arborist is recommending that both red ironbarks be removed, as they did in 2021 when you voted to retain both trees. Despite the lack of any detail in that report, I still respect its opinion, but it has not demonstrated that removing the trees is the only reasonable outcome. The applicant's arborist report was based on a site visit 12 months ago. My independent and highly experienced arborist assessed these mature trees last week. He believes tree 7 should be retained and has also advised that the smaller red ironbark that's next to tree 6 should also be retained. His view is that given that we can conduct pruning and appropriate management means there's no justification for removing tree 7. I recognise safety is important. Where there are credible professional opinions that consider safety and recommend retention, I ask that council choose the option that preserves trees rather than the option that removes them forever.
Thanks very much, Fiona, for joining us this evening. Our next speaker. Our next speaker is Damien Luckinen from the Good Samaritan Inn. He is speaking in person for the item. Welcome, Damien. You're welcome to have 2 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Firstly, I just might like to make the point that this is 2 trees. This is not a cluster of trees. There's just 2 trees. We cannot keep the trees, and that's been borne out in 2021 when they were deemed to be in poor condition, and also 5 years later, 2026 now, where the condition has actually worsened. There's a responsibility to keep this site safe, which involves young women and at times children as well. And that is a significant responsibility. This is not a development proposal or development request that is intensifying the site. There's no buildings being replaced. Space will be maintained around the trees. There are existing trees that are being retained on the site. Replacement planting will occur, and that will involve significant trees, a lemon-scented gum and a Sydney blue gum, that are both structurally better trees and will be better presented in this environment. We certainly commend the officer report in supporting this request. It is a balanced report that assesses the planning issues of the use of the site and those concerning the condition of the trees. It is supported by Council's arborist, it is supported by Council's landscape architect and the planning officer. And the officer report concludes that the trees with their declining health, poor structural condition, low retention value and associated safety risks, together with the absence of any practical or reasonable management measures, outweighs the benefit of their retention. And we seek Council's support for the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Damien. So, councillors, before we move the motion, does anyone have any questions? Yeah, Councillor Alida.
Of the Speaker. Can you clarify, excuse me, the Speaker who has just stood up?
So that's Damien?
Damien.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, ma'am.
The arborist report that was submitted in 2021 on the part of the applicant, are you suggesting that that report recommended that both trees 6 and 7 be removed?
No, it did not. It recommended that tree 7 be removed. And what it did say that with significant maintenance measures, that the other tree could be sought to be retained. So
tree 7 could be retained with significant maintenance or management measures. Is that correct?
Well,
was that the conclusion of the arborist's report?
The conclusion of the arborist's report was that both trees were not in great condition, but it sought to retain one of them. Now, the more recent arborist report has been informed by a gentleman, Mr. Reynolds, who is not willing to support the maintenance of both trees because the impacts are too significant.
Thank you, Damien. I think we appreciate that. I just want to go back to the 2021 report regarding tree number 7, because this is important for the council to understand. The report did say that that tree could be retained. That wasn't lost on the council at the time. In the ensuing 5 years, given that the report recommended management of that tree, what has happened to manage that tree? Has there been any attempt, and if so, what attempt to manage the tree, given that the applicant did have this report stating that the tree should have been managed? So what attempt has there been to manage it?
Well, I understand that there was nothing pressing that was to be required during that period of time, but that the tree has declined in its condition.
Mm-hmm. So given that...
As it has aged.
Through you, Mayor.
Okay, so final question, Councillor.
Yes. Given that nothing was done, what sort of management do you think is going to...
Point of order, Mayor.
...be implied?
Point of order, Mayor. I think it's unfair to try and ask our speaker to give opinions on how the tree should be managed or shouldn't have been managed, try and almost rewrite history. The tree is what it is today, and I don't think it bears any relevance on our decision tonight.
I'd like to challenge that point of order, Mayor.
I'll accept that point of order. No, I'll accept that point of order. So that's the question. So does any other councillor have a question on this item for any of the speakers at the moment?
Bad luck.
Okay, so councillors don't have any more questions. Councillor Rick, did you have a question for any of the speakers? Okay. I don't know, that's okay. Thank you, Damien. You're welcome to take a seat. Thank you for your feedback. Okay, so before we move the motion, does any councillor have a question of officers?
Mayor, we have differing reports from two different arborists regarding tree number 7. How do we reconcile, how should council reconcile the differences in terms of these trees and their ability to be retained?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. So as outlined in the officer report, we consider that the removal of both the trees is justified. The feedback, as I understand it from Council's arborist, having reviewed this very recent arborist report that was tabled by a resident to council for their consideration, is that the assessment doesn't differ, so they agree on the assessment. The point of difference is whether it's a reasonable amount of management that is required in order to retain the tree, or is it an unreasonable amount of management required in order to retain the tree. So that's effectively the decision that council needs to grapple with and make in their minds tonight, is whether or not it is reasonable to require the retention of that tree with the extent of management that would be required to make sure it's safe.
Thank you, Director. Does any other councillor have a question for officers? Okay, so I'm calling for a motion on this. So Councillor Leader, did you have something else to say, or are you moving?
Thank you, Mayor. I do wish to move an alternative motion to the officer's recommendation, being motion A, and I'll take this opportunity too to foreshadow that in the event this motion is lost, I intend to move another alternative motion, being motion B. So, that's okay, I'm fine. Thank you. Motion A considers that the removal of tree 6. Point 2, changes, no, we'll go to point 2A, notation stating tree 6 is to be removed. Just tree 6. Motion, rather, 2.2B, that indicates 1 replacement planting in the planting schedule and notation on the plan to replace tree 6 with Angophora costata, Sydney red gum. And point 6, inclusion of additional new conditions as follows. Amended permit conditions. 33, prior to the removal of tree 6, as shown on the plans prepared by Habitat, Landscape and Environmental Design Consultants, issue H, dated May 2026, a tree management plan prepared by a suitably qualified arborist must be submitted to the satisfaction of the responsible authority that demonstrates how the replacement tree is to be maintained. The tree management plan must include A, immediate installation of a robust tree guard following replanting, B, a maintenance program that includes inspection, watering, mulching, pest and disease monitoring and treatment, formative pruning, and C, implementation and ongoing maintenance of the replacement planting and tree guard. Point 34, unless with the further written consent of the responsible authority, replacement planting as shown on the endorsed amended landscape plan must be undertaken within 3 months of the removal of the vegetation and thereafter maintained to the satisfaction of the responsible authority. Point 35, the approved tree establishment and management plan must be implemented to the satisfaction of the responsible authority. Can I just say at this point, Mayor, that it looks like there has been a couple of words left out of motion A, which were included in the collaborative document. Could we just go back, please?
We are voting, or not, we're going to vote, we're moving forward on these words here. We're moving forward on these words here. So,
it's supposed to be a tree establishment and management.
okay, we're moving forward on these words here,
Okay.
the amended permit conditions. All right, so we have Councillor Alida McKern as the mover for motion A. Do we have a seconder for this item?
Point of order. Point of
Councillor
order.
Rick Garotti is seconding.
Mayor, the councillor had worked on some wording to be presented to council, and that was worked on prior to this meeting. I'd like the opportunity for the councillor to have that motion up before us. I believe that would be fair.
This is the motion A that is being put forward to us to vote on.
Tree establishment and management plan. So, to
Mayor,
clarify
just
that, thank you,
clarification, I
Deputy Mayor.
don't believe it was the motion that was intended to be put forward. And so voting on a motion that hasn't been put forward by a councillor would be incorrect procedure. And potentially the councillor might like to call, I've got the term now, a pause to the proceedings to work through. Use suggestions.
Okay. So those two words have now been put in, is that correct? And we are now voting on what is on the screen in motion A. Is that correct? Yes, Count Mover, that is correct.
That is what I requested in the first instance.
Okay, and so you are satisfied now that that is correct?
That appears to be correct.
Great, and Councillor Rick, you are seconding that?
Yeah, I proudly second that, Mayor.
Great. As the mover, Councillor Alida, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. This application returns us to a planning permit first considered by Council in 2021 when Council considered a permit for the conversion of the former Bond Street Convent into community care accommodation. At that time, the proposal attracted around 30 objections from nearby residents. While I supported the important social purpose of providing accommodation for people experiencing hardship, I was also concerned about the loss of mature canopy and its impact on neighbourhood character. I therefore moved an alternative motion supported by my fellow councillors enabling the development to proceed while retaining tree number 6 because of its important contribution to the streetscape, biodiversity and visual screening of the development. This is why I questioned the Speaker, because it actually circled back to this application coming to Council in 2021 and my questions, I believe, were relevant. Today, Council is being asked to consider the removal of not one, but 2 mature canopy trees, 6 and 7. I acknowledge that the planning balance has changed. The site is no longer a largely vacant convent. It is now home to families who access the facility's outdoor spaces. It can change the consequences of any tree failure, and public safety must remain a paramount consideration. Therefore, having considered the arboricultural evidence now before Council, I accept that there is sufficient evidence to support the removal of tree number 6. My remaining concern relates to tree number 7, where there remains differing professional opinion. And I'm not convinced about the response given to us by the Director this evening. Council's arborist and the applicant's arborists recommend removal, while an independent arborist engaged by a resident concludes that tree 7 can be retained through appropriate arboricultural management, if indeed the applicant is prepared to undertake this. Having considered the evidence, I believe there is sufficient uncertainty to justify removal of tree 7 at this time, subject to appropriate ongoing arboricultural management. I also believe that Council should strengthen the permit condition for any replacement trees. The land is affected by a vegetation protection overlay, which calls for protecting of existing trees and new trees. If mature trees are removed, simply planting replacements is not enough. Accordingly, my motion also introduces a tree establishment and management plan to introduce conditions that should help ensure today's replacement planting becomes tomorrow's mature canopy, rather than another tree removal application in the future. Thank you, Mayor.
Great, thanks very much, Councillor. So Councillor Rick is the seconder. Would you like to speak to the item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'll make a couple of brief comments. One, I'd just like to acknowledge the ward that is in and the expertise, both as a ward councillor, but through her own professional experience and understanding in the industry that Councillor McKern brings. And so I appreciate that expertise and I value it and rely heavily upon it. So I certainly appreciate what Councillor McKern is saying this evening. To the resident, thank you for sending through that, preparing at your own cost and sending through that arborist report. I just suggest in the future, perhaps ensure that it is more widely distributed, because I thought every councillor had received it. I forwarded it on to the officers and thankfully I did, because that's what enabled them to receive it, analyse it and come back with some meaningful analysis to this group. But taking account everything I've now heard this evening from the two speakers and ward councillor on this topic, yeah, I feel very comfortable in supporting this alternative recommendation and it has my support. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor. Okay, would any other councillor like to speak to this item?
Why not?
Oh, you're so polite, Councillor Matt.
Thank you, Mayor. All I'll say here is that I have done and continue to do a lot of work with the Victorian School Building Authority, and they've got a list of trees that have to come out, and they include these trees, just pure safety, even healthy trees. Sadly, it's incredibly unfortunate. So I agree with Councillor Grotti and the comments he's just made, and I too thank Councillor McKern for her what she's put into this. We're councillors here, we're not experts in the field, and we need to rely on the experts in the field. And when safety, community safety is in question, I rely heavily on the advice of the consultants that are engaged to do it. I'll be making my decision based on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Alicia, you wanted to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. I am grappling with this one. It's probably a very good word for this one because we have some evidence to suggest that the tree should be retained, and thanks to the resident that sent us through the arborist report, it's taken me a little bit to catch up with all of the detail in it. I'm grappling with the fact that council, in our responsible role as the planning authority, has to balance up all needs of the community. And I'm a big supporter of retaining our mature trees. And what I'm grappling with is the balance of the risk and the community use, because I think that if we're going to have the space avoided because there's a perception of risk that has been placed through some of the other arborist reports that exist, I'm struggling as to whether we should support the removal and put a tree in place that is likely not to create that, that fear or that risk factor. The other issue is, as the speaker pointed out, that there's an obligation for maintenance, and what does it require to have this tree in place? I do respect the views of the councillors and the ward councillor that has been put forward. I'm just still grappling with the fact that which way I'm going to go, because I suspect that this will be challenged in either way, and I'm probably just leaning with a 0.01% on retention of the tree, and I would suggest that probably people listening to the debate are probably sitting on both sides of this fence as well. But I think I'm just over the line.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Peter, you'd like to speak to the item?
Yeah, before I do, could I ask the relevant officer a question? We provided some information when we questioned around why different arborists may have come to a different conclusion on the safety and risk of the trees. Could we please share that information for everyone now?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. So as I said earlier, the arborists are basically consistent in their assessment of the health of the tree and its structural concerns and its need for maintenance. The point of difference is whether or not the extent of management is considered reasonable. So Council's arborist considers the amount of management required in order to ensure the tree is safe is perhaps on balance too much to warrant standing in the way of the tree being removed. Whereas the other arborist assessment provided through one of the residents states that the tree can just be managed. It's going to require a lot of maintenance, but that's fair and reasonable because the retention value of the tree outweighs the costs and implication of the management. But what they both agree upon is the tree must be managed if it's to be kept. Otherwise, it risks becoming a hazard and a failure. And if it becomes a hazard, then it doesn't need planning permission to be removed. It's just simply removed. Yeah.
Thank you, Director. So, Councillor Peter, did you want to speak to the item as well?
Yeah, look, this is particularly difficult, and I do everything I can to retain trees wherever possible. In the prior meeting, one of the assessments were undertaken from a private arborist from a resident, and they didn't have access to the site, I believe. Our officer provided that information, that an assessment will require being able to assess it from all aspects of the tree. That was some important information that I need to consider, and I'm supportive of maintenance, but when it's a provision of housing on this important site where we need to ensure there's safety as well, I'm a little bit uncomfortable in retaining one of those trees that needs significant work. So I think I will be voting against this, but supportive of the option B that will be coming up if this fails.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor. So I'll just speak briefly on this. I'd like to thank the two speakers. I would like to thank the resident, Fiona, for all the additional work that she has contributed to this item. Well done. Also, Councillor Alida has invested a significant amount of time on this item with all the information that has come before us over the last 3 days. So she spent a lot of time this weekend. We spoke last night. I certainly appreciate the tree establishment and management plan. I appreciate that concept moving from today, moving forward. That's something that is to be commended and certainly considered and put in. We'd love it to be put in place for all situations like this where we have new trees planted and there is a significant amount of time invested by either the owner or council in maintaining the tree so the tree is healthy and has a chance of growing in place for, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. We'd love to see that because we do need a lot of replacement trees now. So I appreciate that. I'm done, and I'm now going to ask Councillor Alida if she would like a right of reply before we vote on this item.
I just want to thank all the councillors for their time. I've tried to speak to all of you and engage with you, and I've really respected how you've taken this matter very seriously. I also want to thank the residents who are very passionate about their area, about the character of their area, the amenity and the biodiversity. It's because of you that we work so hard as a councillor group to try and preserve our treescape. And regardless of how this decision goes tonight, it's something that we will continue to advocate for in the future. So know that nothing really is lost in terms of our advocacy. And I'm also hoping that a tree establishment and management plan actually does become part of all our permit conditions when we go to remove and replace a tree, because when trees are removed, they are usually followed by a condition for replacement. But if a tree is simply planted and left to its own devices, that's where you have the propensity for the tree to eventually develop structural issues, particularly if there is human movement around that tree, which in a highly urbanised environment like this is highly likely. So we need to ensure that we're not just planting trees, but that we're interested in their long-term benefit and management, so that those applications aren't revisiting the council in 20 years' time.
Thanks very much, councillor. Okay, I now put that in motion. All those in favour? All those against? So 2 against, 4 in favour. So that is carried. Thank you. Okay, we are up to item number 15, general business. So a few of us have general business items. Moving around the room, possibly starting with Councillor Alicia. Thanks, Councillor. I think you have a couple of items, don't you? General business?
Just one.
Just one? Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Mayor. So last week we attended the celebration for the Inclusive Employment Program, the IEP, and the recipients received their certificate of completion. And I can tell you there was a lot of proud officers and directors in the room for the people that have worked in with them over this period of time, and the people that gained skills also offered us a lot of skills that we would not necessarily see through those formalised, structured recruitment processes. So it's very exciting to read and hear about what they accomplished in their time with council. I was also in attendance. With me was the Mayor, Councillor Alison Champion, and Councillor Mary O'Kane, and we thoroughly enjoyed meeting all of the candidates, hearing about their best results and their achievements, and I look forward to the next program. Very exciting. Thanks, Mayor.
Oh, thanks very much, Councillor. So, Councillor Matt, did you have any general business items?
Yeah, I do. Just preempting one of the questions that's coming up in the next item. I just wanted, Mayor and councillors, I just wanted to open a conversation about kindergarten allocations in Banyule and the effect of our current process having on families in our community. I need to acknowledge the work already done in this space. Allocations are genuinely complex, and officers are balancing capacity, geography, funding, hours, and equity considerations across a large municipality. And I don't raise this to diminish that effort. In recent weeks, just in the last 2 weeks, I've been contacted on 6 separate occasions with this issue from parents and educators. And that volume of approaches on one topic tells me there's something going on, needs some attention. So my primary focus here is the formation of community. Our kindergartens don't run themselves. Every one of them depends on parents volunteering to form a committee of management. People step up for places they feel connected to. So without that sense of belonging, we risk a shrinking pool of volunteers willing to serve. So one parent who contacted me put it plainly. She's been the vice president of her eldest child's kinder for 2 years, and her middle child won't be attending the same kinder. And it's just been confirmed this evening that there's 6 other families at the same kinder that are in the same boat. 2027, the siblings won't be going to the same kinder. So I wanted to share a case study with the residents, express permission to use her name here. So Melissa Layton has had 2 children attend Viewbank Preschool and has been an active member of the Preschool Council since 24. The youngest is currently waitlisted for the 3-year-old kinder with no guarantee to get in. Nor will they have guarantee that even if they're in at 3-year-old, they go to 4-year-old. So Melissa believing allocation should be given greater weight to siblings who previously attended in local families through something of a fairer point system. So I'm concerned, Mayor, this is a growing issue with immediate impacts now and longer term community consequence if left unaddressed. And I also wouldn't mind noting that when one of our childcare facilities recently closed, we were advised this reflected an oversupply in the sector. The conversations I've had in recent weeks makes me wonder whether this tells the entire story or whether there's a mismatch where supply sits and where families need it. So in coming weeks, I'll take this up with relevant officers and our CEO and to understand the current process and if there's a potentially an improvement to the model. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Peter, did you have a general business item? No? Okay. I have 3. So I've been pretty active over the last few days, starting with last Friday. I had the privilege of celebrating Banyul's U3A 40th birthday party. We had a room full of enthusiastic and connected residents, many of whom have had careers in the education sector. So there was cake, which was cut by the oldest member, who was 102 years old. I know, right? And there was singing, and there was lots of laughter, and there was a lovely meal, and very vibrant, welcoming environment. The top level of the Monty Eltham RSL was full. Now, if you'd like to learn a bit more about Banyul U3A and an opportunity to join, please go to u3abanyul.org.au. So this is a group of retired or semi-retired residents who create a range of programs, classes, activities to keep their minds and bodies active. Like many other Banyul groups, they contribute invaluably to each other's lives. Over the weekend, the Lions Club of Eltham celebrated their 50th birthday. So I was joined by the Mayor of Nillumbik, Naomi Joyner, and the member for Eltham, Vicky Ward MP, for the Eltham Lions 50th birthday that was held on Saturday, starting in 1976. So that's when it was founded. There was a small number of enthusiastic residents wanting to assist community, and it has grown dramatically, with some members being recognised for 10 years, 20 years, 30-year membership and support. It is always a privilege and very humbling to join groups like the Eltham Lions Club because they are selfless, sorry, wrong word. Can you guys delete that? Just delete that little bit when it goes out. A selfless local group of volunteers who simply want to contribute to others and make their lives a little bit better for having some kind of presence in them. So if you would like to know about joining the selfless Eltham Lions Group, please go to eltham.vic.lions.org.au and ask for John, and he'll be able to help you out. Last one on Sunday, Banyul Network of Uniting Churches and the Heidelberg Historical Society congratulated the Heidelberg Scots Uniting Church on its 125th birthday on the weekend. There's a goal, 125 years. We were invited to view the Busy Bee quilt, which was a fundraising activity in 1895 to 96, based on the same kind of fundraising activity that is written about in Little Women. The quilt is made from cotton, 100% cotton, and each square was purchased for 4 shillings, which was about a tenth of one's income of the time, and each square is hand-stitched with the donator's name in a dark red thread. So the many names are pioneers of the local area, original families after whom various streets and public locations are named. So if you would like to know more about visiting the museum, the Heidelberg Historical Society Museum in Jaker Street, or becoming a member or volunteer, please go to heidelberghistoricalsociety.com.au. The common theme amongst all of these community members and these groups is that they are all welcoming. They are all members who love to share their expertise and their interest with visitors and potential members. So if you're interested in any of their beautiful groups, please go to their websites. Moving on to Councillor Rick Garotti, I believe you've got one general business item.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just an item of general business regarding Homelessness Week. So that it runs from today until Sunday. And obviously just acknowledging those in our community, many in our community who were sleeping rough this evening. Obviously, many in the community are aware that council's responded by funding an outreach service through MOS, Mary Outreach Support Service. And we've also supported the Winter Accommodation Resource Model, WARM, initiative, which has been operating now for 2 months successfully, run on volunteers, housing up to 12 guests per night through a number of local churches. And so I would just suggest to the community and anyone listening in, those here tonight, WARM is doing a really good job, but their volunteers are getting a little tired now after 2 months. If there's anyone in the community who's available to assist them by volunteering over the next couple of weeks, they would be tremendously grateful, and I would highly commend that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor. And Councillor Alida, you've got a couple of items, haven't you? Is that right?
Yep. But I just wanted to just quickly speak to Councillor Garotti's item. I think it's very important, the Homelessness and Warm initiative. Councillor Garotti, does it run just for the winter period? So will it be finishing up at the end of August? So you're really looking for volunteers for that 1 month period. Yeah, I think that's a really good one. If anyone can put their hand up to help, it's a very proactive project. On another note, the Mayor and myself attended the annual Highball Cars and Coffee event at the Bell Street Mall. I don't know if anyone in the gallery attended. It was actually my first time, and I've got to say, I was very surprised. The car parks around the mall, including the mall itself, were absolutely packed. Lots of people appreciating all manner of cool, quirky, vintage cars, motorbikes, and virtually anything with engines and wheels. It was really fascinating, wasn't it, Mayor, to see such a congregation of diverse members of our community appreciating people's vehicles and what they contributed, because there was no need to register. You just brought your vehicle along, stood there and waited for others to photograph, engage, appreciate. BANSIC was also present, and it was a terrific opportunity for them to build some funding, running a sausage sizzle. So congratulations to them. I was delighted that they were there providing some food for the masses, because there were only a couple of cafes open, and that concerned both the Mayor and myself. Given just the number, there were hundreds of people there. I thought it would be a terrific opportunity for local businesses of the mall to be opening and taking advantage of the trade. So it was disappointing to see so many roller shutters down. I think that's got to be worked on, because this event is obviously very popular in the area, and it's one that local trade could be taking more advantage of. A date claimer, I'll put that out. The last Chelsworth community meeting, which we focused on safety concerns of our community, was quite a popular success. That was run in May. Our next community meeting, which will be more the usual Q&A format, will be on Thursday, the 24th of September, also at Ivanhoe Library in one of the U3A rooms. And per our usual format, you can arrive at 6:15 for some informal networking, a cuppa and a bicky, and then we start the meeting at 6:30. I'll be very kindly joined, as usual, by Banyule Council's CEO to answer questions and discuss topics of interest to our community that are council related. So do register with me by sending an email and get your topic or question to me so that we can not so much preempt what the answer should be, but it gives us something to talk to our gathering to, rather than taking things on notice because we don't have an answer. It's like a launching pad for further discussion. It's good that we can go away, do some homework on topics of interest to you before we arrive at the meeting. It's called being prepared, I suppose. So hoping to see another full room for our community meeting. Until then, stay well, everyone.
Lovely. Thanks very much, everyone. So item number 16, public questions. We've received 8 public questions. And if any members of the gallery, if any members of the public are actually in the gallery who have a public question, they are welcome to approach the lectern and ask their question when I call out their name. For those who are not present, the question will not be read out and will be included in the minutes of the meeting. And the minutes will be available on the website a little bit later this week. So for those of you asking questions, please note that councillors already have the background information. So when you ask your question this evening, we ask you to please just ask the question itself rather than the background information. So we are starting with Belinda Price from Rosanna. Hi Belinda, welcome.
Hi. Thank you. Thanks for taking my question. When council enters into a Section 173 agreement with a landowner, what documentation, if any, is created and retained separately from the agreement itself to record the reasons for entering into it and its intended planning purpose? Is this recorded formally at the time, or is it left to a planning officer's interpretation if the matter is revisited in the future?
Thanks, Belinda. And I believe Director Swan is going to answer that.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. In most instances, when council enters into a Section 173 agreement, it is an outcome of the issue of a planning permit and required as a condition of this permit. In these instances, the reasons for the decision to enter into the agreement is captured in the officer's delegation report prepared in response to the planning application. In instances where a Section 173 agreement is required through a different process, normally an exchange of letters would outline why an agreement was required.
Lovely, thank you. Kat Wright from Rosanna is our second question. Hi Kat, welcome back.
Thank you. So on the 2nd of July, which is 12 days before the proposed tree removal at Ellesmere Parade, yourself, Mayor, wrote to our local member, Anthony No Comment Carbines, on the basis of the scale of concern and potential for imminent tree removal, and requested that detailed information be urgently made publicly available, which included a detailed tree-by-tree plan identifying trees proposed for removal, retention or pruning, clear and comprehensive plans of the shared path alignment along Ellesmere Parade, including full construction footprint and any alternatives considered to minimise tree loss, arboricultural and biodiversity assessments informing the current design, a confirmed schedule for the tree removal works, and detailed replanting and rehabilitation plan, including timing of planting and maintenance commitments. A similar letter was also sent to the Honourable Gabrielle Williams. The residents would like to ask Council whether this information has ever been received, and if not, what you will do to pursue this information on behalf of the community.
Thanks, Kat. And the answer will be given by Director Natasha Swan.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mayor. Council wrote to both the Honourable Anthony Carbines MP and the Honourable Gabrielle Williams on the 6th of July 2026. We are yet to receive a response to these letters. Council officers have received detailed plans from the project team. Council does not have permission to share this information with the community. We've also asked the project to make the information available to the public. We encourage residents to continue directing inquiries to and requesting information from the project team directly.
Thanks very much, Director. Next question is from Emma Samuel of Viewbank. Hello, Emma, welcome.
Thank you. My question is about the council's strategy for community building in Banyule for families with young children. Can the council look into implementing a points-based kindergarten allocation system like Nillumbik, which will continue to protect vulnerable children, but will also consider families already connected to the kinder and facilitate access for children to attend their geographically closest kinder like they're due for school. For context, I'm a parent of 3 children under 6. I've been the vice president of my oldest child's kindergarten for the past 2 years, and at this stage, my middle child won't be attending the same service as my eldest child. There are at least 6 other current families at my kinder in the same situation. As a parent with young children, we live in a society that can be incredibly isolating to parents with young kids, and your local kindergarten offers an opportunity to connect with other parents and start building that village. An allocation system like this is common sense for enabling community building and continuity for parents and young children.
All right, thanks very much, Emma. And our officer response will come from Director Joseph Tobacco.
Thank you for the question, Emma, and for your incredible patience waiting till the end of the meeting. Emma, we really appreciate the contribution you've made to your kindergarten community as a parent and vice president, and we understand how disappointing it can be when siblings are unable to attend the same kindergarten that has become an important part of your family's life. Council's Kindergarten Central Registration Scheme already uses a priority-based points allocation system that aligns with the Victorian Government's priority of access requirements and Council's Kindergarten Central Registration Policy. Applications are assessed and ranked against these criteria to ensure places are allocated fairly, transparently and consistently whilst prioritising vulnerable children and families for access to kindergarten. Families can view the Victorian Government's priority of access information on a website which will be published in the Council minutes, along with Council's Kindergarten Central Registration Policy, which can be viewed on Council's website. We have this year seen a significant increase in the number of registrations for 3-year-old kindergarten programs, particularly as more families access sessional kindergarten through the Best Start, Best Life state government reforms. This strong demand has resulted in high waitlist numbers at some popular kindergartens, meaning not all families can be offered a place at their preferred service. We acknowledge your suggestion that additional weighting be given to factors such as established kindergarten connections and proximity to service. Feedback such as yours is valuable in helping Council understand the impact allocation decisions have on families and communities. As demand for kindergarten places continue to grow, Council will continue to review its policies and processes to ensure they meet the needs of the community while balancing equitable access for all families. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Director. Okay, our next question is from Isabel Wright of Rosanna. Hi, Isabel, welcome.
Hello. In relation to the level crossing removal project at Rutherford Street, can Council advise on what date it first met with representatives of the level crossing removal project regarding the McLeod level crossing removal and the proposed shared bike path along Ellesmere Parade, Rosanna? The dates of subsequent meetings, identifying the Council officers and councillors who attended, and advise whether the removal of mature street trees to accommodate the bicycle path was discussed, including whether alternative designs that retained the trees were considered.
Thank you. Being answered by Director Swan.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Records of council meetings are reported in council meetings in accordance with council's governance rules. They include councillors and officers who were present. Council was briefed on the project on the 29th of September 2025 and the 15th of June 2026. Only high-level information was provided at these briefings. Council officers have had ongoing meetings with respect to this project since late 2024. These meetings are of an operational nature and facilitated through our major transport project team.
Okay, thanks very much. Next question is from Samantha Wright of Rosanna. Hi, Samantha, welcome.
Thank you for taking my question. The residents have not seen any detailed plans of what is proposed for the bike path and landscaping on Ellesmere Parade despite promised consultation, and we are still unclear of the detail that the council has seen. We want to know what council knows about the final design, and we are asking council to push the level crossing removal project to release detailed design and landscaping plans to residents and to facilitate a full community briefing to review the design. If council does not have these details, what will council do to support the residents in obtaining this information and undertaking a public meeting?
Thanks, Samantha, and answered by Director Swan again.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. So Council wrote to both the Honourable Anthony Carbines MP and the Honourable Gabrielle Williams MP on the 6th of July 2026, and we are yet to receive a response to these letters. We have continued to ask the project to make the information available to the public. We encourage residents to continue directing inquiries to and requesting information from the project team. If the project agrees to have a public meeting and don't have a venue, we're happy to make one of our facilities available.
Thanks very much, Director. Okay. Deborah McKerkin from McLeod. Hi, Deborah, welcome.
Thank you. After the removal of the 372 trees along Ellesmere Parade, a small number of trees, including 2 critically endangered Studley park gums, have been retained on Ellesmere Parade. However, the tree protection zones are inadequate and have been moved by contractors to facilitate earthworks. As these trees are now the most precious trees on Ellesmere Parade, what will Council do to ensure the ongoing protection of these trees, such as placing them on Council's significant tree register and ensure the tree protection zones are correct and, most of all, adhered to?
Thanks very much, Deborah. Okay, and the response will come from Director Swan.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. As the Ruthven Street level crossing removal project is a Victorian Government project, Council does not have direct control over construction activities or planning approvals. The State Planning Minister is responsible for the enforcement of any of the planning scheme requirements for the project, which includes the tree protection. Council officers have been passing on any concerns raised directly with us from residents to the project team. Any vegetation within the road reservation does return to Council after the project concludes, and we resume management of remaining vegetation. As a consequence, Council doesn't not require a nomination to the significant tree register to ensure their protection.
Okay, our next question comes from David Mulholland of Ivanhoe. Welcome back, David.
Thank you, Mayor. It's great to have the discussion on trees tonight. It seems so much. This is really important because over the last 10 years, we've actually seen probably the largest destruction of tree canopy that I've witnessed in Banyule. My question, given the significant loss of mature trees and tree canopy associated with the construction of the council-supported green transport route bicycle path along Ellesmere Parade, Rosanna, will Council commit to initiating a comprehensive street tree replacement program along Ellesmere Parade using large canopy, Indigenous or suitable shade trees to restore the avenue's tree canopy as quickly as practicable, and if not, why not?
Thanks very much, David. And the response coming from Director Natasha Swan.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. The removal and replacement of vegetation associated with the project is the responsibility of the Victorian Government as the project delivery agency. Project documentation indicates the project includes commitments for revegetation and replanting, including a commitment to plant 2 trees for every tree removed, together with landscaping and greening works. Council supports the restoration of tree canopy within the corridor and will continue to advocate to the project team for high quality landscape outcomes that maximise canopy cover and appropriate to the local environment.
Thanks very much, Director. And Samantha Carter from Belfield. Hi, Samantha, welcome.
Thank you, it's my first time. Okay.
Special welcome.
Thank you. My question was, and I've forgotten how I worded it because I didn't print out the paper. I've been speaking to thank you. Thanks. My neighbours, we're very concerned about parking. What's happening
so
is...
Samantha, I just need the question. We've got the
question
background.
is,
so
okay,
the question
good.
starts with, will additional parking?
Will additional parking be made available to the visitors to the housing complex has been built on in Belfield, on Oriel Road, Perkins Ave, Daphne and Banksia. There's an awful lot of apartments and townhouses going up. I've got the numbers here, but I'm sure you know what they are.
Yeah, so
but it's just
485.
when my visitors come, where are they going to park?
Yep, no, thank you so much for that question, Samantha, for the 485 plus housing units got written in your question. So that will be responded to by Director Natasha Swan.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. So Council notes the development on land surrounded by Oriel Road, Perkins Avenue, Daphne Crescent and Banksia Street, which comprises 377 housing units. The provision of resident and visitor parking for the development is generally considered through the planning approval process and incorporated into the approved development design. Should parking pressures arise once the development is occupied, Council can monitor parking conditions in the surrounding streets and consider whether any parking management measures are warranted based on observations, observed demand and community feedback. This may include reviewing existing parking controls and safety concerns, particularly where parking affects sightlines or access to driveways. It's noted that on-street parking in the area is already subject to some forms of parking control.
Thanks very much, Director. So that's the end of public questions. Item 17, we're up to the closure of the meeting to the public. So councillors and members of the gallery, we need to close the meeting to the public. And just before you move, can I ask you to remain seated? There is a procedure to close the meeting, and I'm asking you to remain seated while this happens. We need to avoid disrupting this whole procedure. We are still in a council meeting and we need to not disrupt the live stream. So councillors are being asked to leave the chamber within 2 minutes of the public meeting closing to allow the confidential meeting to begin without delay. The confidential meeting will be held in a different room. In accordance with section 66(2)(a) of the Local Government Act 2020, the meeting will now be closed to members of the public for the consideration of one confidential item. 18.1 Strategic Property Acquisition Opportunity in Greensborough. So the information contained in this council report is designated as confidential information in accordance with the section 3(1)(a) of the Local Government Act 2020. For a detailed explanation of the confidential designation, please refer to the slide as displayed or the council meeting agenda. Can I please have a councillor move and a councillor second for the council to close the meeting to members of the public prior to considering confidential items? So moved, Councillor Rick Garotti, seconded Councillor Peter Castaldo. Now calling for a vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. The next ordinary meeting of council will be held on Monday, the 24th of August 2026. I now close the meeting to the public at 9:30 p.m. Thank you very much for your attendance this evening and please get home safely.